Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Minister of State Buttimer for being here this morning to hear the debate. As you know, Minister, I represent Dublin Fingal East in North County Dublin, a very young population, a very fast-growing population. What we want to discuss here specifically is a lack of primary school places in the village of Portmarnock. This is an issue I've been raising for a number of months. I've had PQs down to the Minister. The responses, unfortunately, have been most unsatisfactory. I put a PQ in about primary school places and I get a response about post-primary school enrolments and the pressures in that space. Unfortunately, that's not the question I was asking, and that's why I'm bringing this to the floor of the House. I'm going to continue to raise this because I do feel strongly, and the data will back this up, that we are in for an absolute crisis, which is already manifesting itself in Portmarnock. The reality on the ground is very different from the version that the Minister has outlined in response to PQ. In reality, primary schools have only been taking children up to the November birthday on the first round and the December birthday on the second round, which is becoming earlier and earlier this year. Essentially, children born after December are being told, when it comes to school places, primary school places in Portmarnock, that there's no room at the inn, and children are beginning to have to start at 6 years of age. And this is before the crisis is going to reach its peak. I'm going to throw a lot of figures at you, Minister, but the key point here is that we estimate that there will be a 120 place deficit per year for children in the area in the very near future. And this is likely to be a bit of an underestimate. I want to thank a number of residents in Portmarnock who have assisted in gathering this data for me. But based on publicly available data from the CSO and the Department of Education and planning permission websites in relation to new estates, the 2022 census captured that the under 5s population to be 602 children. These children would have been in the area by April 2022, which was the time of the last census. Taking an even division of ages 0 to 4, that would equal approximately 120 children requiring junior infant placement and subsequent primary school place class grades from September 22 to 2026. However, since the last census, there have been several large housing developments in the area, namely Dunsea, Skylark, St Marnock's Bay and Drimney Manor, increasing the population in the area rapidly. These housing developments are of course welcome. However, these developments need to be paired with increased infrastructure. To illustrate that, I've worked up a couple of examples for the developments and the estimated and expected number of children needing primary school places from these estates alone. The Skylark development has 982 units proposed for the development in the area, providing mainly 3 and 4 bed family units. Nationally, 69% of households in Ireland are families based on the 2022 figures. The Fingal County average for the number of children per family is 1.42, a conservative value based on anecdotal evidence from the Portmarnock area. Therefore, using this conservative estimates of these 982 units, there would be an expected 962 children in this one estate alone. Extrapolating the same logic to Drimney Manor, where there's a total of 278 units for the estate, which approximately 100 were sold by this time around the April 22 census, leaving 178 further units. That would be an estimated 174 children within these households. That's a total of 1,136 children estimated to be residing in these estates alone once complete. A subpopulation of the total Portmarnock area, again, which is not taking into account families that are moving into the older houses in Portmarnock, of which there are many. Not all children, of course, are the same age. Therefore, it's estimated that over the next 2 to 7 years, there will be a need for approximately 220 to 230 junior infant placements each year for the children of Portmarnock. The two existing brilliant primary schools in the area have a combined capacity for 120 to 140 children based on the classroom size data. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. Thank Deputy Duncan Smith for raising the matter. I'm taking the matter on behalf of the Minister for Education. Can I just again remind the House that on behalf of the Minister of the significant challenges facing us in terms of meeting increasing demand for pupil places throughout the country, and as Deputy Smith raised in terms of Portmarnock in the coming years, and the opportunity to clarify the position in relation to the provision of primary school places in Portmarnock, County Dublin. Can I assure Deputy Smith that the provision of both mainstream and special education school places to meet the needs of children and young people at primary and post-primary level is an absolute priority for the Department of Education and Youth? The annual enrolment process for new junior infants at primary and new first years at post-primary is a very large-scale operation that is transacted at close to 4,000 schools across the country, involving some 140,000 pupils. In order to plan for school place needs, the department divides the country into 314 school planning areas and utilises a geographical information system to anticipate school place demand. Information from a range of sources, including child benefit data, school enrolment data, and information on residential development activity, is used for this purpose. Additionally, Project Ireland 2040 population and housing targets inform the department's projections of school place requirements. Portmarnock School Planning Area SPA has 5 primary schools, and the SPA enrolments are projected to peak in 2027, with enrolments decreasing further thereafter. While the department is aware of enrolment pressures and demand for additional school places in some areas, including Portmarnock, it is important to note that enrolment pressures can be driven by duplications of applications from outside an area, and the school of choice factors. Notwithstanding the above, in some areas demographic pressures and other factors are driving a requirement for additional school places. And I've heard you, Deputy, regarding the matter you raised here in terms of deficit of places. Since 2020, the department has invested over $6 billion in our schools throughout the country under the National Development Planning, including the completion of over 1,275 school building projects. Government support for this investment, including by way of supplementary capital funding, has delivered real benefits for school communities. A recent government decision has approved $210 million supplementary capital funding for the department, which brings the total capital allocation for 2025 to the department at $1.6 billion. The department currently has a school building project for Malahide, Portmarnock Educate Together National School, which is currently at stage 2B, or planning stage of the architectural process. This project is for a new 16 mainstream classroom primary school with four special education needs classrooms to accommodate pupils with special education needs, and the department has 2 additional school accommodation projects to provide additional capacity in the area, namely of St Nicholas of Myra National School and St Helena's SNS, which are both at stage 1 or initial design. As part of the National Development Plan review process, all departments, including the Department of Education, are currently engaging with the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, NDP delivery and reform with respect to the NDP allocations for the period of 26 to 2030. It is expected there will be clarity in these allocations over the course of the summer period, and this will allow the department to comply and to plan its capital investment programme for 2026 to 2030 period in line with prioritised needs and reflecting as appropriate with government priorities in the wider sense. Maximising existing capacity in schools to meet needs is very important. The progression of prioritised individual projects to meet the most urgent needs in that 4-year window from 26 to 30 cannot be met through existing capacity across existing schools in the local area will be considered on a rolling basis from autumn onwards after the NDP allocations are finalised. The department's main responsibility is to ensure that schools in an area can between them cater for all pupils seeking school places in the area, and in relation to school admissions is the responsibility to manage aerial authorities of all schools to implement the enrolment policy under the Education Act 1998. I will bring the Deputy's remarks back regarding the figures he's raised, and if he wants to give them to me, I'll happily give them back to the Minister again. But the department will continue to keep the school place requirements in the Portmarnock school planning area, as with all other areas, under review.
Thank you, Minister. Look, I sit on school boards, you probably do yourself or have done. Like, I'm aware of the matter of duplication and all the rest. That is why we've presented the data in its baldest form here. Duplication is not an issue here. I know where sometimes it is an issue in other towns, but it's not an issue in Portmarnock. The development and provision of a large new school building for Malahide Portmarnock Educate Together is very welcome, but it's not going to solve the issue in relation to Portmarnock alone. The enrolment policy of Educate Together is non-geographic based, and that school will serve kids in Malahide, kids in Concealy, as well as kids in Portmarnock. The new estates that are built in the south end of Portmarnock, right beside the train station, are high density, as I outlined, very young population. There's a greenway being built from Baldoyle through Portmarnock up the village on its way. It's going to be a wonderful active travel facility. That is a natural place for parents to be able to walk or cycle or scoot their children up to the existing primary school in terms of St Marnock's, or a little further on into St Helens. So that's why it is the provision of capacity within the village, which is where these houses are. The planning permission, worth saying, the planning permission for these houses as well, the developer mentioned up to 8 schools in the area that could cope with the increase in children that these houses will bring. However, the vast majority of these schools are not in Portmarnock and would have enrolment policies that would preclude children from these estates attending. There would be schools in Sutton and Howth and Bayside. So we're bringing a very serious issue. We've done the data. I'm going to send this to the Minister herself, if you could as well, Minister Buttimer, because we will be back on this issue. It is different. That's why I'm setting it out here from other areas, and I do think that with a bit of planning it could be resolved by the department. Thank you.
Thank Deputy Smith again for raising the opportunity, and I do hear his remarks and his concerns regarding the provision of school places at primary level in Portmarnock. The department uses data from a range of sources, including child benefit data, enrolments and information on new residential developments to plan for school place needs. I will take the points you make back, Deputy, and you might provide them to me as well, so I can give them to the Minister as well in the department. There has been significant investment in school infrastructure since 2020, and the department is continually planning for and investing in existing and new schools across the country. The nature of the admission process is both very large and quite complex as offers and acceptance continues to transact, and there can be significant overlap and duplicate applications across areas and schools. While some applications may not yet have been received an offer of a school place for 25-26, families can be assured that all children who require a school place will be provided for, and I will take Deputy's remarks back, and I hear his concerns most definitely. Good morning.